Hi, welcome to Real Builds. We're starting on what you might say an early spring project. After a lot of years, I've decided to pull out my old TR7 and get her back on the road. We're starting with a good cleanup, brushing all the garbage out of it, and we're going to give it a quick wipe down and start an evaluation of what needs fixed on this old girl and what we can improve to make her a little more of a modern car. So we're going to start now, do a little sweeping and cleaning, and then we'll be right back. Thanks a lot. Now, as you can see on here, the flat black, the matte black, it's kind of died over the years. The rear bumper's getting a little tired. We need to do a little something to fix it up. But as we go down this side, again, other than the really dated pinstriping, car's in really good shape. And again, on the hood, we've got that satin black that's not stood the test of time. The front bumper's in not bad shape. It can use a little bit of help detailing it out. A little bit of paint bubbling on the left side. And here's where we've got a bit of a concern with paint cracking and a chip, an old chip that's been repaired. Windshield's good, glass is good. And down on this side, down low, you can see we've got a little bit of black repair to do on the rock guard and a few other things, but nothing dramatic. Inside, the car is in pretty good shape. Now we do have some tears starting, something about being a 40-year-old car, but again, it's all there and it's in pretty good shape. So we're going to move her inside now and start doing a mechanical check. We need to check everything, the lights, the signal lights, the brakes, the steering components, go over it and figure out exactly what we've got so we can plan how we're going to deal with bringing this car a little closer to the 20th century. See you soon on Real Builds. Good evening, welcome to Real Builds. We're sneaking in the garage tonight because we're trying to play a little bit of catch up before spring gets here. So over the next few minutes, we're going to loosen off the wheels, jack up the car, pull some wheels off, take a look at the brakes and suspension on the TR7. Now on day one, we cleaned it up on the outside, cleaned it up on the inside, gave it a good once over, checked the lights, checked the signal lights, checked how it ran. It ran pretty good, but it's got a soft brake pedal, so we couldn't take it for a test drive. So it's especially important now that we give the underside a really good look so we know what we're getting into. So hang on for the ride. We're going to get a couple things ready and start working on the car. So first things first, we need to loosen off the lug nuts. Not take them off, just loosen them off. Take them off would give us a bit of a mess on the floor as the car fell down. So we're just going to loosen these off so that it's ready to jack, and then we'll actually take them off when we get it up in the air. And it doesn't take much, only half a turn or a turn to get them loose enough that you can then deal with getting them off when there's no weight on the car and no brakes to help you out. There's the front. And now we'll do the same again in the rear. It's just a case of getting the tire iron on and giving it enough of a twist to get them loose. So while I finish this off, you can start working on your own, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes on Real Builds. Hey, great, I see you're back. Next step in tonight's adventure is get the lug nuts off like we're doing right now. We've got her jacked safely in the air using the jacking points in your owner's manual and the jack from your trunk. And you've got it up solidly on good jack stands. We put those in the same places that are shown in your handbook for jacking the car up and supporting it. So we know the car is safe, it's not going anywhere, we're safe to work in and around it. So now the wheels come off. And we start by spinning the last of the lug nuts off. like so. And putting the lug nuts where we won't lose them. I don't know about you, but more than once I've misplaced the odd nut or bolt. Off comes the center cap, and now with a little fight, got a little unscheduled challenge here. There we go. She's been on there a while. Now we have the tire off. So we'll set this under the car just as a little extra safety precaution and move on to the rear where we're going to do the exact same thing. So once again, spin off the lug nuts. Put the lug nuts where you won't lose them. The cap, the lug nuts, now for the wheel. And we're ready to start looking at how things are working in the brakes on the front and the back. So I'm going to give you a break for a minute while I get organized, then we'll take a look at front and rear brakes and the suspension. Hi there, and now it's time to take a look at the rear brakes. Now what we've done is we've taken off the brake drum, and it's just like it sounds. It's like a big bowl that slides over the axle, and it's what makes your brakes work. This surface on here, when the brake pedal's pushed, these shoes come out and squeeze out onto this surface, giving you your rear braking power on this car. Now this is an old car. She's 40 years old this year, so she still has drum brakes in the back. Most new cars have disc brakes, and we'll be taking a look at those on the front of this one. But for the moment, what we want to look at is the brake shoes have got lots of material. There's no leaks, a little bit of dirt that we'll clean up, and most importantly, the brake drum's nice and smooth, and other than the cleanup, it's going to be ready to go. What you have to watch when you're taking the brake drum off is from time to time they'll get a little sticky. So you'll need to take your hammer from the toolkit and give them a couple of smacks on the front of the drum. And by front, I mean this surface, not the inside. That shocks it loose and knocks the dust out, so the brake drum will slide off. Now, on old English cars and some of the Japanese, before you do that, look for a little screw like this one that I just dropped that actually holds the brake drum on. It's pretty rare on a North American car, but some European and Japanese in the old cars had this little screw that helped hold everything together. Now we can see the brakes are in good shape on this side. We still have to look at the other. I'll let you do that by yourself on your own car. But while we're here, we're looking at the brakes, the shock absorbers, which are nice and dry, no damage, they're tight. We're looking at the springs, no breaks, no problems. The control arms, the bushings, we're looking for leaks. We're making sure the handbrake cables are in good condition. And in this case, they all are. So we know our rear suspension on this side, we'll do the same again on the passenger side, and the brakes are in good shape, and it's something we don't have to worry about as we evaluate this vehicle. Now, I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll do the front. But right now, I got to put this side back together. And we'll start by putting the brake drum on, making sure it's bottomed, making sure I've lined up the screw hole. And it helps when you're demonstrating to actually take the screw out. So we line up our screw hole with where it's supposed to go and the lug nuts. Give her a smack. With this car, put the screw back in, take our trusty screwdriver and just snug it up. Like so. It doesn't have to be super deadly tight, just good and snug, because the wheel actually goes over onto this surface and helps hold the screw in and keeps the brake drum on. So now we'll move to the front and take a look at how a disc brake works and what condition ours are in, as well as the front suspension. Now we're here at the front brake setup, and it's different. It's a disc brake. Now this, the part you see spinning, that's your brake disc. And this is pretty much the norm on modern cars, front and rear. Some are a little wider, bigger diameter, some have vents in the middle, but it's this style. And you'll see the brake itself is nice and smooth. This is the brake caliper, and it basically squeezes the brake pads onto this disc, creating the stopping power, and they're very efficient at that, especially in wet weather. What we're really looking for here is nice smooth surface here, everything's clean, looks good, and right in here where my small finger is, you'll see the brake pad. And you can see this one's still about 1/4 inch thick. Now that's great because it means we have lots of material left to work with. And we've got to make sure when we're dealing with brakes that we're being careful not to put ourselves in a position where things could go dramatically wrong. So I want you to get a good look right in there. There's the brake pad. You can see it's about 1/4 inch thick. There's a metal backing and then a composite pad. And there's one on each side. So again, when you're driving, this is spinning. You step on the brake from the inside, it squeezes the pads in, grabs this rotor, and brings it to a stop. We can tell it's in good shape because there's no leaks or problems. The brake disc itself is smooth, and there's lots of brake pad, which is real important. Now while we're here, we'll take a look at things like the frame rails that are the important part of the body structure and run right back through here. And we'll look towards the front. And again, our shock absorber, or in this case strut, is in good condition. Again, no broken springs, no problems. We've got a good front end. Right here, towards the front a little bit, this is the tie rod end that comes from the rack and pinion. And it's what controls your steering. And it's nice and tight, as is the sway bar. So we've got a good solid front end. Now, if you haven't done this kind of work before, you may want to have a mechanic do it, or do it with your service manual, not owner's manual, service manual, and a friend who's real familiar with it. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to understand the condition of your car. So I'm going to move over to the other side and repeat the sequence rather than bore you to death. You've seen how to do it front and back. You've seen disc brake and drum brake. So you should now be able to do it on your own if you choose. If not, before we get into the main project, have this stuff checked. There's nothing worse than getting into a project and finding out you've blown the budget because you didn't know what you were getting into. So I'm going to move along and you have fun. We'll talk to you again shortly. So now we've got her back in the single car garage. We're going to take a good look at the engine bay. And you can see right in here, you know, I mentioned we had a problem with the brakes. Here it is. You can see a little bit of brake fluid leaking from underneath the proportioning valve. So we're going to have to dig into that. And we've got a dirty engine bay. Need for a valve cover gasket. A whole bunch of tune-up and tuning tricks. I'd like to see about 20 horsepower or more out of this little car, so we'll be doing some research on how we're going to get there. Just to get her up to modern traffic. Now we've looked at the body, we've looked at the engine bay, we've looked at the interior. We've checked all the lights for function. made sure everything works, or if it doesn't, we've made a note of it. As you saw when we looked at the interior, there is really nothing for a radio, and we're going to have to fix the hole that it's in, as well as a few other things. And you can see this is the garage we're going to be doing it all in. It's a single car, a little bitty one. And as we talked about under tools, this is all we're going to use. Now there's lots more tools in here, but it'd be kind of pointless to talk about a basic build and use everything that's hand. So these tools, a couple others, as well as a 3/8 drill and an orbital sander, that's what we're going to use here at Real Builds to go through this car. And right now we're going to finish making our list of what's wrong and start to do some planning. We'll be back soon at Real Builds.